All right, folks, get ready because we are diving deep today. Like, really deep. We're tackling some of those massive questions, the ones about the very nature of reality, what this universe even is, and, maybe even if we're seeing the whole picture or just a tiny, tiny part. You guys sent in some seriously interesting stuff for us to dig into. We've got physics lectures, we've got spiritual talks, even, some pretty out there theories about out-of-body experiences. That's going to be a wild ride.
What I find fascinating looking at all these sources together is this thread of limitations. Like everywhere we look, limits on what we can see, limits on what we can measure with our instruments, limits even, maybe, on how much our human brains can even comprehend.
It really is like trying to understand the ocean, the whole thing, but all you've got is this tiny straw to look through. One thing that really kind of blew my mind was this concept of 0 point energy. Like, okay, you get rid of all the stuff, the matter, the energy, as much as you can, there's still something there.
It's crazy, right? It suggests that, true nothingness might not even be a thing. It's not possible. 0 point energy, this is the absolute lowest energy state possible, as close to a vacuum as we can get. But even then, even in that vacuum, there's this potential energy. It's teeming with particles that are just popping in and out of existence constantly.
So it's like even the void is like a super busy place. What does that even mean for the Big Bang? How the universe started? Because some of these sources talk about the Big Bang, yeah, but then what was there before that?
And that is where things get really, really interesting, because some physicists think the universe, right after the Big Bang, went through this period of crazy fast expansion. They call it inflation. And some even think this inflation could be eternal. So new universes are constantly being born, and that would be, the multiverse.
Hold up. Multiverse. So multiple universes. Okay, now we're talking. Does that mean there could be infinite versions of all of us out there, all living out different choices, different possibilities?
It's a wild thought, isn't it? And it might sound like, pure science fiction. But the idea of a multiverse, there's actually a lot of theoretical support for it. It's growing. Imagine a universe, right? But you made different choices. Or events happen differently. Those universes, they might exist alongside ours.
Whoa. Okay, all right. Let's shift gears for a sec. We're thinking multiverses, but what about our own universe? Its shape. I mean, some sources talk about a closed universe. They even compare it to things like a Mobius strip or even like a four-dimensional torus.
Try to picture the shape of the universe that could really make your brain hurt.
Yeah.
But a Mobius strip is a good, starting place. It's two-dimensional, right? But only has one side and one edge. So if you could travel along it, you could walk the whole surface and you'd never cross an edge. It helps us understand these spaces where, left and right, up and down, they don't mean the same thing they do here. Non-orientable, that's what they call it.
So, okay, let me get this straight. If the universe was shaped like that, you could travel in one direction and you'd end up back where you started without turning around.
That's the idea. It's looping around without ever turning. Now, scaling that up, making it a four-dimensional torus, that's where things get super mind-bending. Imagine a sphere, right, but it's got a hole in it, and then extend that into a fourth dimension, one we can't even see directly. It's another way to picture a closed universe, one that's finite but also has no boundaries.
My head is spinning, I gotta say, but I'm loving it. Now, we got a few sources that mentioned Admiral Byrd and his supposed diary, the one about finding a hidden civilization down in Antarctica. That one really got people talking.
Yeah, it's a story that really grabs you, no question. But we got to remember, the diary, whether it's real, that's debated, a lot. There's no solid proof to back up what it says, and a lot of experts think it's, made up.
Fair enough. But even if that diary isn't real, Antarctica still has this, mysterious vibe, all the secrecy with the Antarctic Treaty, all that. Is there something to it, or are we just letting our imaginations run wild?
Honestly, it's easy to see why people get drawn to those Antarctic mysteries. I mean, it's this massive continent, so remote and mostly unexplored. And the treaty itself, sure, it's supposed to be about protecting the environment, scientific cooperation, all that. But it does add to the intrigue, doesn't it? Makes people wonder, what are they hiding? What have they found down there?
Talking about hidden stuff, another big theme in these sources, it's like this idea of a veil, right? Blocking our senses from a deeper reality. Like Sadhguru, he talks about having to develop perception beyond our five senses if we want to experience other dimensions.
That connects really well with those limitations we were talking about. Sadhguru's teachings, they really emphasize that we got to go beyond how we usually perceive the world. He even tells this funny story about when he was a kid, he had trouble writing the letter A. It shows how much effort it takes to expand our awareness, to move past what we're used to.
It's like we're all stuck in kindergarten, still trying to learn the alphabet of reality.
Kind of, yeah. It shows how hard it is to break free from those ingrained ways of seeing things, to open ourselves up to all these other possibilities that might be out there.
So bringing it back to this veil idea, are we basically like trapped by our own limited perceptions? Is there a way to break free? One source even mentioned this kind of scary concept of a soul trap.
That's where the thing about out-of-body experiences, that one gets into some really fascinating but also very controversial stuff. It basically says the soul trap, it can only work if you believe it can trap you. Like the limitations are all in our heads and our beliefs and perceptions.
That's a powerful concept, man. So if we could just shift our perception, could we break out of this trap? Experience a greater reality, almost like with VR, put on the headset and boom, you're in a whole new world.
It's a good analogy. It fits with this idea that how we perceive things that shapes our reality. A lot of spiritual traditions, even some scientific theories, they suggest there might be way more to the universe than what we can see and hear and touch, with our five senses.
This is where things get really exciting. We're stepping outside the familiar, moving into uncharted territory. But before we go too far, let's just take a second to process all this. Limitations and then this potential for expanded awareness, those seem to be like the big themes popping up everywhere.
And it's a challenge, isn't it? To question everything we think we know, to push the boundaries of our understanding, and to really consider that maybe, just maybe, there's way more to reality than we're seeing right now. So, back to this idea of seeing beyond the five senses. We touched on it a bit earlier, but it really seems to be at the core of a lot of these spiritual traditions. And, it pops up in those out-of-body experiences too.
Oh, yeah, for sure. Like with Sadhguru, right? He talks about needing like 28 hours of focused attention to, quote, turn you around. I'm guessing he's talking about shifting perception, right? Sounds intense, but I gotta say, kind of intriguing. What do you think he's getting at there?
It's tough to say for sure without more context from the teachings. But if we think about how our perception is limited by our five senses, by how we're used to thinking, then maybe turning you around, it's about breaking free from all that, like cracking open those limitations, opening yourself up to a whole spectrum of possibilities, like a mental upgrade almost.
Ooh, a mental upgrade. I like that. Okay, so let's say practices like meditation, mindfulness, those can actually expand our perception. Where does that leave science in all of this? Are they at odds, science and spirituality? Or is there some common ground there?
That's a big one, a question people have been debating for ages, really. But what's interesting to me is that both science and spirituality, they both seem to be pointing to the same thing, the limitations of how much we currently understand. Science, it's revealing this vast, complex universe. And spirituality, it digs into those deep mysteries of consciousness. They both seem to be saying there's more to reality than what we're seeing.
It's like they're both looking at the same puzzle, right? But from different angles, trying to put together this bigger picture.
Yeah, exactly. And maybe as our understanding evolves, both in science and spirituality, maybe we'll find that they start to converge, towards this unified view of reality, one that includes both the physical stuff and the non-physical stuff.
A grand unified theory of everything. That would be something. But okay, sticking with this exploration theme, what about Admiral Byrd and that whole hidden civilization in Antarctica thing? Even if the diary isn't legit, is there any science behind this hollow Earth idea?
Honestly, most scientists would say no way. The hollow Earth theory, it's mostly considered like pseudoscience. Geologists have a pretty good handle on what Earth's structure is like, and there's zero evidence for these huge caverns or, a whole world hidden inside.
But couldn't there be stuff we haven't discovered yet? In the diary, Byrd talks about these weird warm areas with flowing water and plants, the whole deal.
It's true. Antarctica does have some unusual features, like those subglacial lakes, those geothermal vents. They can create warm spots and, support some life. But it's localized, not evidence of a whole civilization or a massive underground world.
Okay, so maybe not a full-blown civilization, but maybe some crazy life forms down there adapted to all that extreme stuff.
Now, that's definitely a possibility. Antarctica's got a surprising amount of biodiversity, and scientists are finding new species all the time. Who knows what else could be hiding under all that ice, right?
All right, let's zoom back out to the universe for a second. You were saying earlier there are different theories about its shape. Is there one that seems like most likely based on what science knows so far?
The most accepted model right now is a flat universe. Like, it extends infinitely in every direction without curving. And we get that from observations of the cosmic microwave background radiation. That's like the afterglow from the Big Bang.
Okay, so picture a flat sheet of paper, right? But it goes on forever, and it's in 3 dimensions. We're on that sheet, and it just keeps going and going.
That's a decent way to visualize it, yeah. But we got to remember, that doesn't mean the universe couldn't be curved on a scale so big we just can't observe it. Imagine you're an ant crawling on a basketball. You'd think your world was flat, even though to us it's obviously curved.
So it's all about perspective, then. Our limited view, it might only be showing us a tiny part of the whole picture. Okay, another concept that popped up a few times, it's this loosh idea. Basically that Earth is like a soul trap, and beings are getting their energy harvested. What's your take on that one?
Yeah, that's another one where science and spirituality kind of bump up against each other. It's important to approach stuff like this with, an open mind, but also be critical. Belouche things, soul harvesting, none of that's supported by science. It's more in the realm of, like, speculation and belief systems.
But what about people who say they've experienced this, like firsthand, in those out-of-body experiences? Are those experiences not valid?
Personal experiences are always valid, absolutely. It's important to respect what people have gone through, their own realities. But those experiences, they don't always reflect objective truth. They could be shaped by beliefs, by what people expect to happen, even by cultural stuff.
So how do we tell what's real, what's not? How do we figure out what's likely true versus what might just be a good story or someone's personal interpretation?
That's where critical thinking comes in. You got to question assumptions, look at different viewpoints, see if there's any evidence to back up the claims. And also remember, our understanding of reality, it's always changing. What we think is true today, that might change as we learn more.
It's a good reminder to stay open to new information, be ready to change our minds, right?
Absolutely. Especially these days, we're bombarded with information from all sides, and a lot of it's questionable. So learning to think critically, those skills are crucial. It helps us figure out what's worth paying attention to and what to just ignore.
Or maybe take with a whole mountain of salt in some cases.
Maybe. But the point is, engage with information actively. Don't just passively absorb it. Ask questions, challenge what you hear, and then form your own conclusions based on the evidence.
Right? Don't just believe everything you hear, even if it seems like it's coming from a reliable source. Do your research, dig a little deeper, form your own opinions.
Exactly. And don't be afraid to change your mind as you learn new stuff. That's part of what makes this whole journey so exciting. Expanding our understanding of reality.
Speaking of which, we've covered a lot in this deep dive, man. From the universe to consciousness to those mysteries down in Antarctica. What stands out to you? What are some of the big takeaways?
For me, it's this theme of limitations that keeps popping up. We see limits in our scientific understanding, limits in how we perceive things, limits in how much of this vast, complex universe we can even wrap our heads around.
Yeah, and yet alongside those limitations, there's this sense of potential, like incredible potential for us to grow, to expand our awareness, to develop new ways of know, and really unlock a deeper understanding of ourselves and the whole universe.
It really is like we're standing at the edge of this vast, uncharted territory. We've got a map, but it's only half filled in. And it's up to us to explore, to discover, to create our own understanding of what lies beyond. And that journey, that's what makes this deep dive so fascinating. It's what makes life itself so fascinating.
It's a journey filled with wonder, mystery, endless possibilities. And that's what keeps us coming back, right? That desire to understand, to connect, to experience the fullness of reality.
Exactly. It's a drive that's deep within us, part of what makes us human. And it's what propels us forward on this incredible journey of exploration and discovery.
What a journey it's been. But okay, we need to take a pause for a minute, gather our thoughts, get ready for the final part of this deep dive.
We'll be back soon with some concluding thoughts and a final question, a real mind bender to leave you all pondering.
Stay tuned. The adventure continues. All right, welcome back, everyone. Feels like we've been all over the place in this deep dive, from the Big Bang to Antarctica, soul traps, other dimensions, I mean.
It's been quite the journey, hasn't it? We've explored some pretty mind-blowing concepts, and through it all, it seems like we keep coming back to this one fundamental question.
The big one, right? What is reality, really? Is there something more out there beyond what we're experiencing, day to day? Something we can tap into maybe if we shift our awareness, open our minds up a bit?
It's a question that's fascinated humans for, well, probably as long as we've been around. And what I find so interesting is how all these sources, even with their different perspectives, They're all wrestling with this idea in some way.
Yeah, and what really struck me is a lot of them, even the ones focused on science and physics, they seem to suggest that maybe, just maybe, a purely materialist view of reality, it's not enough. Like, it's missing something.
Exactly. Several sources talk about how consciousness might be much more fundamental than we think. Like, it's not just a byproduct of the brain, but something deeper.
Could consciousness be a basic property of the universe itself, like gravity, electromagnetism, but for consciousness? Some of the physics sources kind of hinted at that.
It's a radical idea, for sure. But it's gaining some traction, especially as we learn more about quantum mechanics and, the nature of consciousness itself. What if instead of consciousness coming from the physical world, what if it's one of the building blocks of reality?
Whoa. Okay, that really flips things on their head, doesn't it?
Maybe that's what we need, a total paradigm shift, a whole new way of thinking about our place in the universe, what reality actually is.
And maybe, just maybe, some of those ideas that sound kind of out there, like the soul trap or a hidden civilization in Antarctica, maybe they're just reflections of this deeper truth that we're starting to get a glimpse of.
It's certainly possible. I mean, throughout history, ideas that seemed crazy at the time, later on, they turned out to be true, right, as our understanding evolved.
So, okay, where do we go from here? What does this all mean for us, practically speaking?
Well, that's the beauty of it, isn't it? There's no one right answer, no set path to follow. It's a journey, an ongoing process of discovery. Every new insight, every shift in perspective, every time our awareness expands, it unfolds a little bit more.
So if it's more than just like gathering knowledge, it's about transformation, about expanding our consciousness, waking up to a greater reality.
Yes, exactly. It's about realizing that we're not just passive observers in this universe. We're active participants. Our thoughts, our beliefs, our intentions, they might have a much bigger impact on shaping reality than we realize.
So we're all co-creating this cosmic tapestry, in a way.
I love that, yeah. It empowers us, We can step into our potential as conscious beings and create a world that reflects our highest aspirations, our deepest truths.
That's a beautiful thought. It's not just about understanding reality, but about shaping it, evolving it, being part of its evolution.
And that brings us to a final question, a real mind bender inspired by some of the things we've discussed. If, and this is a big if we are living in a simulation, could understanding the limits of that simulation be the key to unlocking something greater?
Ooh, that's a good one. It's like in those video games, Once you figure out the rules, you can bend them, break them, even create your own levels.
Exactly. Maybe by understanding the limits of our current perception, questioning our assumptions, being willing to explore beyond what we think we know, we can unlock a greater reality, one that's more expansive, more vibrant, and more aligned with who we truly are.
That is a powerful thought to end on. It's like an invitation, right? To keep exploring, keep asking questions, and never stop searching for answers beyond the ordinary. And to everyone listening, thanks for joining us on this deep dive into the nature of reality. It's been an amazing journey. Keep exploring, keep questioning, and keep expanding your awareness. The universe is vast and mysterious. There's always more to discover, more to understand, and more to experience. So go out there and explore. The adventure awaits.